Miller announced an extra £10 million of funding as part of the government's drive to extend broadband to hard-to-reach rural areas. There is no denying the importance of super-fast connectivity to people who live in the countryside. But what about a rather older technology? The mobile phone. Crucial to many companies, our reporter Sarah Neville has been speaking to businesses and campaigners who aren't happy with their signal.
Back in the 80s, mobile phones were more of an accessory than a necessity, but today they're a vital business tool. Now millions of us are doing business via a mobile, often on the move. But a recent survey of over 400 companies in the South East found that 84% had suffered from so-called mobile cold spots. Some of them claiming it had cost their companies up to £10,000 a year. Hi Lil, it's Mandy.
Sorry? Sorry.
Can you hear me? Mandy Brooke runs a global recruitment company near Hastings. The firm's set to double in size in the next 18 months. Her phone is her business, but she says local network coverage is a constant issue. So much so, she's thinking of relocating the company.
I think I'd probably, if I'm out in a day, I may spend a good hour of my day not being able to get coverage. And that's quite serious for me because my time is worth a lot of money. You know, if I was to quantify it, it's a significant amount per hour. Just my time, let alone the poor candidates or clients that are trying to get hold of you.
The survey by the South East Local Enterprise Partnership found swathes of rural Kent and East Sussex where mobile phone signals reportedly dropped out or calls failed, including A-roads around places like Canterbury, Sheppey, Crowborough and the coast road between Dover and Deal. And this is another notorious not spot, the A27 near Lewes. It's roads like this that could be benefiting from the government's £150 million scheme aimed at improving coverage. Initially, that promised to help 6 million homes in rural areas. Now it's been scaled back to reach just 60,000 premises and some sections of A-roads. By the government's own admission, that's a sizable reduction. The nationwide project should be completed by the end of next March. But so far, there's only an open-ended pledge for limited provision in the South East. The Countryside Alliance is campaigning on the issue. It says the government has overpromised and under-delivered.
They have obviously scaled back the project due to funding, and 60,000 is not as many as 6 million, but we really need to make sure that they adhere to the 60,000. Each business is as important to the rural economy. They need their mobile signals to be able to work and live. Individual farmers, individual people that are running businesses have to have that signal.
While the government, through the Mobile Infrastructure Project, funds the new masts, it's the mobile phone companies that operate them. In the past, the industry has pointed the finger at local authority planners, claiming it's difficult to get permission for new masts. Council leaders deny that.
I know that's not true. It used to be quite difficult and there used to be lots of protest groups. It is much, much easier to put up, masts. And actually we've also encouraged a lot of companies are doing it where they're sharing masts. And I think that's a really good idea. So I really don't believe that planning is an impediment.
Back in Hastings, Mandy Brooke thinks the government is forgetting the needs of out-of-town operations.
Everyone's being forced out of the towns, and because of that, they need to be held responsible. They've got to think about what they're doing. If we're coming out of a serious recession, if they want us to grow, then they've got to think about connectivity across the board.
No one can deny the importance of technology like super-fast broadband to the UK economy. But what many rural businesses in the South East want to know is, has the government lost sight of the importance of a basic mobile phone signal?
I'm joined now by John Cook of the Mobile Operators Association. He's in our studio in Aberdeen. John Cook, is there much hope for businesswomen like Mandy Brooks in our film, or will she just have to accept the limitations of the mobile signal in her area?
Hello there, Julia. I think the first thing to say is that any discussion about mobile coverage needs to take into account the fact that in order to have a mobile signal, we need a network of masts. And if you haven't got a network of masts in place, you won't get a signal.
Yeah, I think we grasped that from the film, but she hasn't got a good signal, therefore there probably isn't a mast near to her. Does she just need to accept that, or will that change? Are you going to put masts up in places like that?
The good news is things are getting better. And can I also say that the comments from Mandy and also the comments from Countryside Alliance about the economic importance of mobile coverage, we completely agree with. And actually the operators are very keen to try and help people like Mandy.
Explain to me what exactly a not spot is, or a cold spot. Is it somewhere you just, as an industry, haven't got round to erecting a mast yet, or is it somewhere where the topography means it's almost impossible?
It's a bit of both. The basic problem with rural areas is that it's almost invariably the case that it's much more expensive to put infrastructure there, to put a mast there. And that's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that because they are sparsely populated, you get fewer people using their mobile devices, so the revenue generated from that mast is less. And across the UK as a whole, and I think much of Kent and Sussex would be the same, in rural areas, most of the masts actually, the operating cost exceeds the revenue that they generate. But the government's
putting money into this. The government's putting money into it, and yet there's been no application, as we understand it, for any new mobile phone signals in the Battle area where Mandy is since 2010. So when are things going to improve for her?
Okay, well, there are, in terms of Mandy, if she's in Battle, I should say I've got some sympathy because I know what the signal is like in Battle. I think it's pretty much the same across all the networks. I know if you're on the A21, slap bang in the middle of Battle, you've got a signal. But if you're a few hundred yards in any direction,
your sympathy, I'm sure, is welcome. But are things going to change for her?
Well, I'll say the good news is I can't comment on the specifics of Battle on a specific network. What I can say is that that is exactly the sort of area where I'd anticipate things getting better in the not too distant future.
John, thank you very much. We must leave it there. I want to bring our other guests in, but thank you so much for being there for us. John Cook there. It doesn't really sound like Mandy's got much hope here. Amber, what would your advice be? Mandy Brooks, I think you know her, actually.
Yes, I do know her, but she runs a very successful business. But
maybe she should move her to somewhere she can get a mobile phone
I've been hearing a different answer from your interviewer a moment ago, because he said the good news is Battle's exactly the sort of place that we would expect a mast to be put up. The fact is the government's put in £150 million into this. The first masts were installed at the end of last year, which was ahead of schedule, so I think it's a bit too early to write off this project. It's a long way to go, and I think it's going to deliver a great result in the area for Mandy and other businesses.
OK, the government's promises have shrunk enormously, from improving signals for 6 million people, and that was a pledge made by George Osborne in 2011 to 60,000 households. It's an awful lot of people who are going to get left out, and there are no detailed plans for the South East. I mean, I heard the same answer as you, and I got the impression that that was wishful thinking, frankly, because we've talked to the local council. There are no applications pending for a mast in our area.
It's only just started. We've had the first one's been installed at the end of last year.
So good news. Are you going to tell me that there are plans?
Well, actually, I'm not working in the mobile network operator, but fortunately this interviewer seems to be, and he tells us it's a good place and there will be applications soon. So I think from the expert point of view, it sounds very encouraging.
It's a sort of place where there might be improvements in the future.
The first ones came last year.
I think
you're dismissing it too early.
Simon, you're a former local journalist. You probably remember, like I do, how people used to object to mobile phone masts. You probably went on the same stories I did, all scare stories. Times have changed. People would rather have a mast now than not have one, wouldn't they?
I think there are still some concerns in some quarters about the impact of mobile phone masts, but we've got to now support our communities to actually invest and get those mobile phone masts up there in the villages. I know, for instance, in Amber Rudd's own constituency, in places like Fairlight, there is poor coverage still. How can you encourage small businesses to grow when they can't even get their mobile phone coverage in their own village using their own phone?
What did you hear John Cook say?
I thought that he was saying that there's going to still be a problem for some time to come. The problem is the government's behind with its schedule. It's 2 years behind. It's 2 years. There are 2 years delays. You've knocked out 4G coverage. The government needs to get to grips with the mobile phone companies. Needs to say we need to have universality coverage, and that's the must.
Ofcom are playing a role. We have to take into consideration the fact that taxpayers' money is considered here. Now, I know that's not very fashionable for Labour people, but the fact is we have to make sure the money is spent economically as well.
Of course,
it is taxpayers' money.
Take some of that money that's earmarked at the moment for the cities, for high-speed development in the cities, actually to pay it and put it into the rural broadband needs in some of the
No point in borrowing Peter to pay Paul. We can do it with what we've got, and I just think it's too early. That's not true. We've had the first one have come at the end of last year ahead of schedule. It's too early to see this
disaster. Until March next year.
Yes.
You're never going to.
And I'm really looking forward to coming back in March next year to have the good news.
You're on. We'll have you back on that. Thank you very much indeed. Now, it's one of the things most of our politicians agree on.